You are listening to Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, a podcast where three women discuss horror movies from the silent era through the 1970s. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, and Anchor. Timely, topical, terrifying. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls. We are actually taking a slight sabbatical from our Netflix poetravaganza, because we lost yet another icon. We lost Donald Sutherland, and we thought we'd do an homage to him by reviewing or talking about The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 1978 remake, because it's excellent. Some even say that it was better than the original. If not better, it's as good as, let's just say. But so for those of you who don't know, because maybe you've never watched it, any of the versions, I think there's even a 2007 version called The Invasion, which I have not yet seen, but it's pretty much the same, but they go a little different with the virus. But at any rate, aliens come to the planet. They sneak in the 1978 version through this web-like stuff that comes over, and it grifts with other plants and forms this pod. And if you fall asleep next to this pod, it sucks the life out of you and makes a copy of you that has no emotions and is just kind of part of the hive, for lack of a better way of looking at it. And the alien is basically that thing where they believe in peace, and but they believe peace without emotion or any differentiation. Sorry, I cannot say that word today. So, like, which is the way to do it, but then you lose all humanity, which is kind of the goal for the elites. So that is the short synopsis of what Invasion of the Body Snatchers is. And yeah.
Yep. It had a really good cast.
Okay. An amazing cast, yes.
Very good.
Can't argue that. So yeah, Donald Sutherland plays one of the lead roles. Brooke Adams plays the other lead. They're supporting. We have Jeff Goldblum, Leonard Nimoy. Was it Vanessa Cartwright?
Veronica,
thank you. Who's also amazing in her own right. Really well cast and amazing amounts of cameos. Just great cameos. We have the actor from the original 1956, he was the lead actor in the 1956 Invasion of the Body Snatchers, comes in and it has the scene where he's like, "We're all doomed," and help me, help us, they're coming for me.
Yeah, where he's running up to cars and trying to stop them and get help, which is kind of the way the first movie, the 50s versions, closed, if I remember correctly. It's been a while.
Close. They get him and then they pull him into a psych, well, for a psych eval, and then the 1956 one was actually, the version I just watched was optimistic in its ending, because it seemed like he was able to, because of a happenstance of a wreck with pods falling into the freeway that was coming from his hometown, the authorities that he got to outside of his own town were like starting to mobilize and try to counterattack. So it's a little more optimistic than the ending of this one. Which I guess we'll get to, but yeah, Betsy. Yeah,
I was gonna say we can talk about that later, but I read something on IMDb about that, the original optimistic ending, and then why this one doesn't have one. Basically, he refused to shoot one. They wrote it up and he refused to shoot it because he knew that the studio would make him put it on.
And he didn't want to.
Didn't do it.
Well, I guess that's one way to get around it.
Yeah, he didn't want them to do that. He thought it cheapened the story, and so he purposely didn't shoot it so that they didn't have it to fall back on.
Another noticeable cameo from the original was the director from the original movie, the 1956 one. He is the cab driver.
That's fun.
Yes, that just takes him to the airport, but doesn't, that sets him up. Type H in the cabin. Did you catch that? I love that.
Oh yeah, immediately.
And Rebecca, the other cameo.
Oh yeah, the spot of Robert Duvall. Like if you blink, you'll miss it, and if you're not looking close, you'll miss it. Just because he has an uncredited role. At some point, you see a priest on a swing with other children, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I mean, I guess they're trying to show daily activities, but in light of all the disclosures and of past events, that's an unfortunate choice for the scene nowadays.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to meant to look playful, but given like,
Yeah,
things that have come out about the Catholic Church and the priests in,
exactly.
the
But
last 20 years, it
that's
looks
kind
more
of neither
creepy.
here nor there, though. So, but yeah, I, I just and it, like I said, if you blink, you miss it. Because I was like, "So kind of looks like I don't know." And then later on today, I was looking up the cast. So, and didn't you say that like because he did it uncredited? Did you say like he got a jacket out of it?
Yeah, the trivia, I think they said like an Eddie Bauer jacket or something along those lines was his payment for his cameo.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in the IMDb trivia. If you're interested, you can look it up and see it. I forgot exactly what it was. Another fun trivia, of course, is the banjo and the singing is Jerry Garcia from The Homeless Guy with the Dog, but the homeless guy is not portrayed by Jerry Garcia. It's just him playing the banjo for real, in the sound, but not the actor there. But if the actor sort of looks a little bit like Jerry Garcia did, so it's pretty funny. So of the Grateful Dead, to be clear. Oh, and there's another. This one I love this too. So Kevin McCarthy, that is the actor who played the original main character role in the 1956. When they were rehearsing in San Francisco in the Tenderloin, a naked homeless man lying with his head on the curb recognized him and said the first one was better, which is
Wow.
hilarious. Who knew?
Yeah.
But yeah, like so many good things. So first of all, it's yet another horror movie, a sci-fi one, where a woman tells you something is fucking wrong and gets completely disregarded and gaslit and talked over and try to explain it away. And then you even have a second woman going, no, this is really, there's something, no. And it's not like it's isolated. Go ahead, Betsy. You look like you're ready to.
That entire scene with the second woman and Leonard Nimoy when he like grabs her
Oh.
and is like forcing her to touch her husband. I was like, I couldn't have even acted in that scene. Punched Leonard Nimoy. I punched Leonard Nimoy, but then I wanted to punch Leonard Nimoy. Oh my god, I was so mad for her. Like, don't do
Yeah.
this. Do
It
not do
just
this.
is very disturbing. Very
Mhm.
disturbing.
I hated it so
So
much.
Oh god.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
even when he grabbed Jeff Goldblum's character and threw him against the wall as an example. And I'll tell you what, like I'm still not really sure, like when was Dr. Kivich, I think was his name, that was Leonard Nimoy's character.
Yeah.
Um, when was he a pod person? When wasn't? Was he supposed to be a pod person the whole time, which would make sense? But he was
I
acting very emotional for a pod person.
He was.
I
I don't
see
think
where
he
though
was.
acting. I mean, imagine he could pretend. I mean, he's got all the memories of what it
Yeah,
is like to be an emotional person. So I
I
don't know. It's
suppose, but then you think all of them would have been able to hide it better for longer instead of people immediately
yeah,
being like, this is not right.
Yeah, I don't think he was a pod person until they came for whatever was happening later. I think during that whole scene where he was like being really mean to Elizabeth and all that, I think that he was still him then. When he pushed Jeff Goldblum up against the wall, I think he was still him then. I think he became a pod person
Yeah, so that was
after
my
that.
theory. I think like when they woke him up, when they called him to come to the mud bath, I think
yes,
that's when he was pod person because I think he was the one who
Yes.
shoved the guy out the window, the body out the window and all that stuff then.
Yes,
But
because
yeah,
I also think he was sleeping, and when you went to sleep, that's when the pod people got you. So that was my take on it. I may
Mhm.
be wrong, but that's when I thought he changed, like his character,
I can get
because
behind
he
that.
also became more staid, which he
maybe
was
still
not.
mocking them a little, but it was more flat.
Yeah, it
And he
it was
wasn't
still
throwing people
him,
against walls anymore.
right? It was still him, and he was still like shitty, but he wasn't like emotional shitty anymore. He was just shitty.
It's a very good adjective where he was shitty. But yeah, no, so the main character played by Brooke, well, one of the main characters played by Brooke Adams. Remind me of her character's name. Is it Elizabeth?
Elizabeth.
I
Yeah.
called her Elizabeth, and then I wasn't sure I was right.
Yeah, it's Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, we'll go with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I cannot speak English very well, but so she finds a pod, and they're tiny at first, and she brings it upstairs and sticks it on the nightstand next to her boyfriend. And she wakes up in the morning and he's already up and he's basically getting something off the floor. Yeah, it is Elizabeth Driscoll. He's, he's cleaning something off the floor, which apparently seems the remnants of the pod, like it got knocked over in the night, is what you would normally assume. But he's not responding to her. He's just kind of walking away like a, mindless automaton, really, at that point, and going down and meeting the trash man. And you just see all this fuzz in the trash. It's just this gray stuff. And when you're first watching, you think maybe it's just bad production, where they just put gray mud there. But no, it's deliberate. It's supposed to be the dusted remains of what, the people that got emaciated and sucked into the pod, basically. They don't get sucked in, but they kind of turn into husks, and as you'll find out later in the movie.
Yeah, they're drained.
And she knows something's wrong, and she tries to tell Donald Sutherland's character, who's Matthew Bennell, who basically, they work for the Department of Health, by the way. So this is actually a nice update where, they should be taking a hand and paying attention to stuff. And Elizabeth is, but Matthew is not. Because his first response when she says it to him is, of course, to tell her that, go see my friend, he's Dr. Kibner. It was Kibner, that was his name. And she's like, I don't want to see a shrink. He's like, just think of him as an intelligent man. He's not going to tell you you're crazy. He'll just give you alternate reasons for why it may appear that your boyfriend's not himself. And you're like, But meanwhile, after he's done talking to her, he goes to his dry cleaner, and there's, the guy who runs the dry cleaner is like, that's not my wife. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
Two completely different incidents. You'd think that would be something.
That have zero connection with each other as far as he knows.
Right. It's not like they see each other.
Yeah. Wouldn't somebody in a health position, in the position responsible, especially there, because the opening scene with him is restaurant inspector. So he's going to be, when he's in his work, looking for patterns and this and that. So, okay, one incident you might brush off. Two, that's interesting. I wonder if I should think about it. By the time the 3 happens, you're like, oh, yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, you have the woman in the book signing for Kibner, completely unrelated as far as I could tell, And again, both those women get written off. And then the next thing you run into is the body in the mud bath, which, first of all, I got really squeamish about the mud baths. All I could think about is like, how often is that mud clean, and how many people?
Yeah.
And poor Veronica Cartwright having to help that man out, and he's all slick.
Well, meanwhile, Jeff Goldblum's character, her husband, Jack, he walks right by the guy. The guy's asking him, I think, for help to begin with, and he just freaking ignores him and makes his poor little wife try to
No kidding.
Well, he cries because nobody read his poetry. I mean, I was like, what a prick.
Yeah.
But here, okay, ladies, did you catch this? So, okay, they have the body in there. Like, it's not clearly, but they make it clear that it looks like something that's forming into Jeff Goldblum's character. Yeah. And then when Donald Sutherland's character goes to leave, he says that he's tired, Jeff Goldblum's character, and he wants to lay down and rest. But at that point, Veronica Cartwright, her character's name's Nancy. Nancy tells him not to sleep. She tells him to walk around and not to sleep. So I think there's a little like timeline thing here, or, that they forgot, that nobody realizes yet. Or there's something I missed as to why she didn't feel like he should go to sleep. But she was very, don't go to sleep. She was right, but it was like, did she cue into something? There was a miss there for me. I was like, what happened?
Maybe there was footage edited at that point. Yeah.
Because it seemed like later they didn't realize that, because they all went to go to sleep, and, then they realized. But so maybe she thought he had a concussion from when she hit him in the face when she was screaming about, I don't know. There was something there that I thought that they just missed, like bad timeline, bad continuity there. Let's put it that way. But yeah, so it's funny to me too, because it's just, finally though, Donald Sutherland, upon the viewing of this body, is like, okay, something is really up, and he starts worrying about Elizabeth for real, because after talking with Kibner, he just drops her back off at her home with her boyfriend, who, may or may not be, well, they never call them pod people. That's a term that came out afterwards, which I guess us being podcasters, we're pod people now. So do be wary. Um, but like, and it's funny because like the boyfriend gets her because he's bought her a plant with a lovely card on it, and the plant, of course, is the pod. And she just walks it upstairs and sits it down next to her bed and falls asleep.
Does she not even notice that it's, of course, I can't remember if they had connected the plants to the changes yet.
Not
haven't yet.
until after he takes her out of there. Because so she's, becoming sickly and can't breathe, and Matthew calls her, and the boyfriend takes the phone away and leaves it off the hook. Something you can't do anymore, folks. But I mean,
Yeah.
that was the way to block calls back in the day. But yeah, and then he just goes and breaks in, and when he gets into the house, he sees in the they have like a little greenhouse per se off their apartment where her pod person is blooming. And he sees that, freaks out, runs upstairs, finds her in the bed, gets her out of the house, calls the cops about the body there, gets back to, I think he brings her to the mud baths where Kipner basically tells them all they're insane, there's no body there. And he tells everybody to while they're there, Jeff Goldblum somehow is digging in the mud in one of the baths and finds the pod. And he's smelling it like it's a
Don't do that.
rose. And,
Gross.
No,
so
no,
that's
no.
kind of when they make the connection because Nancy's like, well, Elizabeth's like, I think that might be a problem. I think it's poisonous. Stop smelling it. And he's like, why? It's just a little pink flower. And Nancy's like, stop smelling it. And she's like, his wife,
her.
and he's like, it's a pink flower. And she's like, Elizabeth goes, I cannot identify that plant anywhere. I think it's poisonous. Stop smelling it. So they finally get rid of it. Men.
Never listening.
And then
Sure.
they definitely, after they fall asleep, and Kipner tries to basically kill them all by putting them all, drugging some of them, and they see the bodies, and yeah. Which at this point the police have already been taken over. So whenever Matt calls the cops to get help, they like
He's
blow them off.
gone, yeah.
So here's another question for you ladies, if this comes
Mm-hmm.
up much later. So of course the pod people go after them because they want them to assimilate. And they're running and trying to escape, and some of them don't make it. And Nancy, the smart one, figures out that you can fake it by just kind of being emotionless and calm, and you could just walk among them and it won't draw any attention. But after she reveals this to Matt and Elizabeth, and they go out of the health services center, they get accosted by a dog with a human face, which was the homeless man and his dog.
When I saw that, I was like, hey, did John Carpenter see that for The Thing?
Oh, possible. But my question is, so there's a scene before that when Matt and Elizabeth are heading to the health services where they walk by the homeless man and the dog sleeping, and there's a pod there, and they kick it and it kind of loops a little.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, like, did they kill one pod and there was another one hidden and they both morphed into two, or because they kicked it, something happened? Like, is that what was supposed to happen? Because it made no sense really, because there's been several occasions where two people at least were sleeping by a pod and only one person got potted. So that's my new word for it. But
Maybe it's something with the dog DNA. I don't
The pod got confused because he kicked it and it had a concussion. The pod had a concussion.
just kicked it, and so it sort of halfway moved from the dog to the person, or person to the dog.
Whatever,
Maybe adjusted
yeah.
where the location had to,
Because nowhere in this at any point do they say that animals will also be taken over. So I'm guessing that's not something that they're looking for. I think they were only going for humans. So I'm going to guess it was a fuck up. Like, I don't think they meant to get any of the dog in there at all. I'm going to guess it was something that he did when he kicked it that made that happen. Because otherwise, this would have been way scarier, because then we would have had a birds-like moment with, like, things attacking and stuff like that. And we didn't have that. It was bad enough.
If it wasn't an accident, I'm thinking the transformation only happens to higher level animals with more thought ability. rather than just any old creature.
Maybe.
No.
It's entirely
theories.
possible with that guy being an alcoholic, like that the dog actually had more brain activity.
I mean, it's an option. There's any theory is good with this. But yeah,
Anything is possible at this point. We don't know. It's a horror film. I will say that I told Seth, I was like, okay, they have made a big mistake that I would not make. And that is going to work when you might die. I am never going to my office if I think I'm threatened. Never, ever, ever. I don't want to die there. I don't want to die at work. Oh my
That would be the
God.
last place.
I have literally told people, I'm like, if there's ever an actual tornado anywhere near the Huntington building, I am running outside because I'm going to die out of this building. We're in a mire. It will collapse and I'm dying not in it. Thank you so much.
no, I'm with you, especially when you think about the Polaris compound.
Like, not a chance in hell. In a mire, it's just gonna go. I don't want to be in there. Anyway,
Look, imagine trying to play hide and seek in those places. You're just gonna die. It's awful. Just don't do it. Yeah, I would not go to work either. I'd like, if I was stuck at work, I would do everything I can to get out of there.
and it's not like they were getting any kind of information really. They went there to hide.
Mhm.
And I'm like, this is stupid. These things have all the memories of the people who know you. They know you work there.
They're gonna know every spot that you know.
Yeah, I would go somewhere completely 100% unassociated with you whatsoever because they're less likely to go there. Just saying. I
Yeah.
would have been smarter in this. No, I would, again, in this situation, I'm going to die right away. I'm
Because I'm
a
gonna
first
sleep.
odd person.
Yeah. I did kind of
I'm
laugh a
gonna
little
smell
bit
the
at
weird
it.
flower and sleep. I'm just gonna be honest about it. Not because I want to die or anything, but just because I'd be like, look at this weird flower. I would take it home too. I like sleeping. I'd go to sleep.
I'd
Jenny
be sitting there
dies.
poking that
Yeah.
thing with a stick, like bonk, bonk, bonk. What is this thing? And then, yeah, I would have been one of the first.
I mean, it would
At
be
least
pure
I know that.
happenstance if I made it. Just pure
Oh, yeah.
happenstance.
It would have been an
Similar.
accident, not because I didn't want to. And God knows I can't not emote to save my life. So there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to fool the pod people into thinking I'm one of them.
Yeah, my face is gonna talk.
My sarcasm would take over. Like, at the very least, I might be able to be devoid of any other emotion, but if somebody says something stupid, it's gonna come out. I'm just like,
Mhm.
done.
Sure.
Really? That's where we're going with that. You're superior.
God,
Did
but
you
the
see
hands
the
do
dog
it.
with the man's face? That's how superior you are. Like,
But
what is that noise
overall,
you're making? Come on.
I thought they did a really good job with the movie of creating tension and
Oh,
just
yeah.
there was never any let up. There was
Yeah.
always that sense of danger because who can you trust? You're
And
looking
you're gonna
around
fall
and
asleep sometime.
yeah, and just the sheer physical limits of the human body. At some point, you will fall asleep. Period.
The inevitability of it, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is adding into the horror of it. I thought the horror level was obviously much higher than the original. And I'm not surprised. I mean, 1950s horror films weren't exactly, this a sci-fi horror film from that age isn't exactly what we would necessarily consider scary.
Well, what I would say is I think the difference being like, because they did in the 50s ones, you did have that same buildup of tension, that same, a similar one,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say same. And the Who Do You Trust was definitely part of it for sure. But the sound, the music in this one is what really did it. They really thought about stuff a lot. And like if you pay attention and read trivia, because this clues you into it, it talks about how they steadily removed all like organic noise, like birds and things like that. Any kind of animal environmental that is not man-made or automation noise falls out of the background as the movie continues until you only have like street horns and weird, factory sounds and just
Mhm.
nothing that is natural is left. So you don't hear, birds chirping and frogs ribbiting or any crickets, chirping, none of that. It's all gone by the time the movies progress towards the end, and you just hear car traffic noises buildings make. And they had that prenatal heartbeat actually from, I think it was the director or the writer's wife's sonogram in there for part of the alien noises.
Oh,
Yeah. So they did a great job with the scoring, basically, and that just takes it to a level that the 1950s one didn't have, because they just didn't take it to that thought,
Yeah. Yeah, scoring and sound design is something a lot of people don't really think about when it comes to a movie. But I saw it in a quote that was discussing, I saw it in a quote discussing the original, not the original, the prequels, the Star Wars prequels. I was watching a sort of behind the scenes making of thing. And it talks about how they're building a sound landscape. And that was something which stuck with me. And actually, one of their sound designers had also worked on Star Wars. So I have to wonder if that's a part of it, because their sound design is always, pretty good. So
Yeah. Always has been very innovative. Yeah. So yeah, I would just, oof. And the end is really heartbreaking. They go through so much, and Matt and Elizabeth, like Matt, you know from the start that Matthew, the now Donald Sutherland's character, is clearly crushing on Brooke Adams' character, Elizabeth Driscoll, from the start. But it just seems a little into him, but not obviously that much. More of like, that friend that you're like, you know. But by the end of it, they're clearly in love with each other, and mostly Crisis can bring that out in you, I guess. And then,
trauma bonding.
she tries so hard, and he leaves her alone for like seconds because they hear the Amazing Grace on bagpipes, and he thinks there's hope. And she's twisted her ankle, so she's sitting in the weeds, near the river. And he gets to the river, and it's like, I love how they did this too, because you think with the bagpipes and the Amazing Grace, you feel like that even you as the watcher feel like, oh, this has got to be a sign that there's an out, right? That's why
My
they're
thought was,
playing
hey, there's a person.
something. And they did this in the 56 one too. You hear music playing, and you go up, and in the 56 one, it was farmers, I think, that were loading pods onto their truck. So it was just as disheartening there. And in this one, it's pods being loaded onto barges to go out. And, but so you can see Donald Sutherland's face go from to, but when he
Collapse.
goes back to Elizabeth, she's like, he tries to wake her up, but she's almost a husk already and nothing more. And he's holding her, telling her he loves it. She just crumbles in his arms. And then up pops Pod Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're all like, anytime they run into any of their friends or anything that changed, they're like, no, it's fine. We're happy. We shouldn't have fought it. Well, of course, but you're a pod person. What else are you going to say? It sucks. Don't do it.
Yeah.
You've been assimilated.
Oh, okay. The pod person says it's fine. Why don't I just again see my sarcasm?
I kind of suspect a little bit of bias there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not buying it. But you got to give it to Donald Sutherland for a couple of reasons, because most men, when they see their love interest butt naked in front of them, are probably just going to put it aside and see what they can do before they become a pod. But Donald Sutherland's character is not having any of it. He just runs and decimates. So they stumbled upon a factory where basically were hydroponic farm, shall we say, where they were growing the pods.
Yeah, they were like greenhousing pods.
Rapidly growing them. So they were, and he takes it out. He does a good job of destroying it. And Donald Sutherland did his own stunts for that scene, and he did okay, but an extra missed the cue and got burnt up a little. He lived, but
Shit.
Yeah,
Thanks.
not paying attention.
A lot. There was a lot going on during that scene, but I liked it. Like, I enjoyed like the drama of him finding the axe and then going over and like chopping all of the things, and everything keeps falling and then catching fire. And I'm like, this is exciting. Okay, wait.
And I liked it. Because it was the 70s, and almost all material in the 70s was fucking flammable. So that's not like, that's one of the few times when you see that, like, oh, it's just going to catch fire. Yes, it probably was.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
oh yeah, that factory was in fact unsafe. It was gonna burn. You are correct. Smart
No
man.
lies detected there.
He knew that because he worked for the,
Urban Health.
safety. Yeah, the Board of
Yeah.
Health. He knew it was going to catch fire.
And it was great. And you're because you see him, you're like, yeah, he's sticking it to the aliens, but it's a futile effort at the
But,
same time.
okay, so in my opinion, that's where like we stand out. I feel like,
Yeah.
especially Gen X, like we know we're going down, but we're gonna give a big middle finger on the way out. We
Kind
don't
of what that
fucking care.
was.
We're like, yeah, you're gonna win. I'm gonna fucking kick you in the dick before I go. You're gonna remember me for a while.
You're
So
gonna win, but it's gonna hurt.
I fully applauded the effort despite the futilities.
I mean, that's it. He did what he could while he could. I get it. I get it. You either lay down and die or you just do what you can while you can.
Yep, take a shot while you got it. And then, and I loved how they did the end of it because, there was enough there that if you hadn't already known the ending, and even if you did, it still gives you a little doubt because, you see him walking and yeah, I mean, you kind of figure 'cause he's dressed up and, he's changed his clothes. So you feel like, okay, maybe something's going on. But then he stops and he looks like curiously at the school kids that are basically being taken for their nap to become pod kids. And then, he walks into the Board of Health and you're still thinking maybe he's a pod person, maybe not. But then you see him stare at Elizabeth somewhat longingly. So you kind of wonder if he's changed or not yet. And then he's sitting back in, but the fact that he's there and working, you're pretty sure things have gone badly. But I love how they put these little elements of doubt in there.
There
He's
is
sitting
just
there.
enough of that throughout the whole film
Yes.
that really upped the ante of the movie.
He's cutting out the articles like he did in the beginning. And like, because why would he be happily sitting at work? But you're also like, hmm. And then when everybody starts walking by, there's that moment of hesitation before he gets up. When he gets to the elevator, there's that moment of hesitation. And this is okay, the side issue, but I thought it was funny. I loved it because the elevator said automatic elevator. And it took me a bit to realize, oh yeah, because they still had manually operated ones back in that day. So for those of you who don't know, at one point in time, the elevator had to be hand operated. There was like a crank, and they had to estimate. A person had to guess what when they were near the floor and stop it and start it. So it was actually a skilled profession. And then they replaced it by hit the button, and you didn't need that anymore. So that's why the distinction was there on that plaque of automated elevator. So you knew that you didn't have to wait for somebody with sticks. Anyway, I'm sorry. But that end moment, he's walking around and you're still like, like I said, but you keep wondering if they're going to try to surprise you. And then the moment when Nancy sees him and played by Veronica Hartwig, they didn't tell her the ending. It wasn't in the script. She didn't know.
Nice.
So I'm sure she could have acted it anyway, but that real big element of realism is because she was totally shocked and a little heartbroken too. And it's just she turns around and this happens and the weird noise they make, and she just loses it.
They're
And
shrieking
it's
alarm
amazing.
sound.
Which has been copied on so many levels. Like I don't know if you've ever seen World's End, which is Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. It's the third of their trilogy, the Cornetto
I don't
trilogy,
think
where
so.
they have their pod people alien
Yes.
takeover emotionlessly. It's basically a ripoff of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's an update of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
It's very funny.
And it definitely pulls this like kind of and following down the street thing out there.
Nice.
But I mean, this was just epic. And so many movies and shows have pulled from it, whether they're mocking it in a fun way, like in a satirical way. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Simpsons did something similar. Family Guy probably did, World's End, like we noted. Or if they're doing something more serious, like if you think about movies like The Faculty, it's the same theory,
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
It's the same plot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was thinking of the one line from The Faculty that always made me laugh, and that's, "Hey, teachers, leave those kids alone." Why? Why would you do that? It's so dumb. And it makes me laugh every single time because it's such a dumb line. I'm like, yeah, anybody could have written that, and you thought you were so damn clever. You weren't, but it's very funny. Oh,
I think I saw that one.
I enjoy The Falcon a lot. It's one of my favorite movies. It's Josh Hartnett, Thea Duvall. Forgot the other actors in it, but yeah, it's really well done. It's fun. And it's the
what?
same premise, and even Wrinkle in Time, the alien planet that, sucked away her dad. Same theory where they want to make everything the same, and that's supposed to give you peace. You take out emotion, you take out everything is same, not so it's equal, so there is nothing to fight over. So,
The faculty is also
although,
Elijah Wood. I was thinking it was, and I was like, am I
thank you.
wrong? No, it is. It's Elijah Wood. All right. I'm done.
Yes.
It
But
was
and it's an
important for something.
interesting theory, but like what's the point then? Like I
There's
would
no
like a world with no war, or the conflicts are ended without people trying to blow each other up or shoot them or whatever. And I totally advocate that, but I don't believe that homogenizing everybody into cutouts is the answer, because then what's the point of the world?
there.
Variety should be the point, differences should be the point,
I mean, and art and things of beauty spring from emotional effects and connections and whatnot, and that the potential for beauty is lost at that point.
Yeah.
And also speaking from experience, when I was in the midst of some pretty severe depression that I probably should have been a little more treated than I was, I wasn't feeling anything like emotional wise. And this was back like 2008, 2009. I just wasn't feeling emotions, period. Happy, sad, nothing. It just felt like a blank. And it was the worst feeling ever. And because you couldn't even be happy about something. And people would say, oh, well, find something, find a little thing that you love. I don't love anything right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think unless you've lived through it, you can't comprehend
Yeah.
the added level of
Emptiness.
horror, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it
Well,
absolutely
yeah,
does.
it's awful.
Yeah.
But you
It's
can't even feel bad about it because you don't feel anything. It's just,
Exactly. At best, you might get a little bit of anger every now and then, but
yeah. So, I mean, that's why I get mad about any kind of agenda that's like, we all should be this way. We shall do this. We shall this. There's just this. There's just this. This is your role. This is what you, fuck it. No, be your weird fucking, be you, nobody else is going
absolutely.
to do it. I mean, this is not free carte blanche to be an asshole, but be you, like you don't have to hurt anybody else to do it. You don't have to do anything. You can just,
Yeah. There's no need
love
to
what
yuck
you
someone's
love.
yum.
Yeah.
There's so much in the world that here's I spend a whole lot of my life making myself happy and not giving a shit what anyone else does, as because it doesn't affect me. Someone else's happiness doesn't affect my happiness. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it makes
Yeah.
them
I mean,
happy and they're having a great time over there doing whatever the hell that is, that doesn't affect me whatsoever. And it doesn't take away any of my happiness for them to be
yeah,
happy, even if their happiness looks way different than mine.
it's not pie, it's not limited.
right. The only
Exactly.
place I will ever draw the line is if my happiness or somebody else's is contingent on destroying somebody else's.
Yeah.
It should
Yeah.
never be. But if that's the person you are, you can go die in a fire. If your happiness is contingent on making other people feel bad, I feel like that you are the person that needs to go away.
Yes.
Like, no. And
Yeah, and I
if
think that's why this movie is it's scary in a lot of ways because it's also scary in that like sometimes it feels like this is what people expect of us and want us to be is they want to tone you down. They want to control your feelings, your thoughts, your actions to this level because they don't want you to be more. And that's a
And
scary place to be.
it
Like,
is. It's frustrating too. It's like there were a few times where when I used to actual post shit on social media other than cat pictures,
where I would vent about something that was really upsetting me at the time. And inevitably, my family would always jump on me for it. Usually my mom, one time my brother. And I still remember those times, you know? And it's like, are we not, emotions are part of us. We must express them.
And that's it. And it doesn't have to be polarizing. Everything I say isn't about you. You know, like so often you'll say something every, so often I'll post something that's just innocuous, like, wow, thanks so much, whatever, or whatever, just a venting post. And someone will come in and be butthurt about it. And I'm like, it's not about you, because if it was, I probably would have just said it to your face.
Yeah. See, you're
Chances
simping,
are,
you're
if I'm
trying-
putting it out there like that, like if I'm putting it on social media, it's something bigger than just like one beef with a person. This is going to be something pretty big, which is why I don't really post on social media. Like at this point, Instagram is mostly book stuff and Facebook is memes, and that's it. And you don't really see a lot of me on social media at all. Because you did get clapped back. You always get clapped back. It just is part of it, and I don't want to deal with it. I don't have to deal with it, and so I don't.
There.
It is what it
I
is.
still test the waters because that's who I am. But yeah, I mean, it's a valid
appreciate that.
point because, I mean, obviously, yeah, you feel what you feel and you don't want people questioning about it. So why put it in a space? It's valid to
Yeah.
not want to put it in a space where somebody's already taking where you're vulnerable and poking at it. Like
And
why
that's
do
it.
that?
And like it or not, I have accidentally put myself in a place where a lot of people look at me a lot. Um, with the winches and some of the other stuff that I'm involved in. I hate it, but it's true. People just like will find me, friend me, do whatever, and then they assume that I am a representative, but they assume that my beliefs represent something bigger than me. And I'm like, I can only speak for me. I can't speak for an entire organization. That's not how that works. I'm the head of it, but I'm not it. Does that make sense? So then I
Yeah,
have to be really careful in what I put out there. It's
it's a lot.
annoying. It's a lot and it's annoying, but it is what it is. And I use my platforms in other ways. That's how it works.
My favorite representation of the pod people is actually workplaces because, even if they put out there, bring your whole self to work, trust
No,
me, they
no,
do
they don't.
not want your whole self
No.
at work. They want your work persona at work, and that's a thing. Like even I have a work persona. It's not much of one, I'll be honest. So
Same.
it's rather amazing that I have a
Yeah.
job still. But it's there's definitely a toned down version of me. I'm like on pins and needle anytime I'm in the office trying to not say things sometimes. And I like to swear and I have to limit that. And
Yeah.
Same.
I like the clothes I like and I have to alter it a little bit. I mean, mostly that just involves a shirt that I have to put on. But still, I mean, everybody. And then like it is so much worse if you are something that you can't hide, like if you have a skin tone, if you have a religious belief that has obvious accoutrements, if you are of a certain, LGBTQIA, it's the level that you have to mask elevates depending on a lot of other things. And in even workplaces that like are pride, we're open to all religions.
See.
That's yeah,
Yeah.
whether or not they mean it, there's still the people you work with. And even if it's not in your immediate group, trust me, there's somebody there in that office just waiting for you,
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's as disheartening as the end of this movie. And I keep hoping one day there'll be a change. And I will admit that I believe that there's slow movement, but the level that we've been set back,
Mhm.
2016 to 2020 being a good example, and what might be coming this fall, it's awful. It's terrifying.
I think that's one of the reasons I think I've had like stress headaches off and on since last week. It's just because it's been up in my mind.
Mhm.
You know, is this sort of pod people world what is trying to be imposed on us. So
Yeah. I mean, 10 Commandments in a public school.
yeah, I'm pretty lit about that. There's they have no place being there. None, zero, zip. Yeah, separation of church and state. The public educational system is of the state. Therefore, it must be separated from the church.
Religion.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd feel the same way if they wanted to put the law of three on the wall. You know what I mean? It doesn't belong there. That is not what that is.
Yeah, I
No,
don't want
that's not what
any of
that's
it.
for.
Well,
So,
I
yeah.
want, yeah, I want children to learn. I want them to question. I want them to dive into information on their own and go searching for things. That's where
Yeah.
I'm learning.
But
I don't know.
yeah,
They might go in a bad direction, and I'm gonna get clear on a soapbox here. We're all,
So
I
I
think, on the same soapbox.
oh yeah. It's now a series of, it's a soap stage.
It's a soap stage. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
But I guess I mean, to me, this is all relevant to the movie because it's all what it says. But I mean, back to the movie, I'm just going to say this much. And I think, Rebecca, you pointed this out in our group chat
Yeah.
right away that, it's very poignant considering the times. And it probably was just as poignant in the 50s and the 70s for similar but different reasons. You had McCarthyism in the 50s. 70s, we were just coming out of like Watergate and Vietnam War.
I
And,
was gonna say the Vietnam War.
so, it's definitely, well, I would probably, okay. In any given decade, there's always going to be a reason where this is relevant. Just like Orwell's 1984 is going to be relevant in any given decade. And I wish that weren't the truth, but it is. And, I'm not going to make a call about more or less dire because there's just no point in comparing those things. So, I mean, shit, if you want to look at something crazy, think about this in association with World War II,
Mhm.
and the Nazis and Hitler, and think about that today with, the hate groups that are moving. And it's just, it's
Scary.
hard. And it's
Scary.
terrifying.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
we're going to burn down the factory, so it's fine. Well, still, as long as we're kicking, you're going to hear us. We're going to be kicking you in the balls.
I was gonna
for this
say
shit.
we're gonna be kicking in the ball. So
I'm dusting off my Doc Martens.
Yes, ma'am.
right under my desk. Kick, kick.
That, and frankly, gotta start working on my cardio. You need to be about run the fascists.
Yep. So I don't know. On that note, final thoughts.
I thought it was a really good movie. I thought it was very well done. Donald Sutherland's performance was excellent. He did a great job. And as I said in our chat, this is very, very good, but very stressful because it really makes you think of what's going on right now. And if you're in any one of the threatened classes, like, well, all three of us here, just by virtue of being women, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So it was really good, but I need a little bit of recovery, like downtime, decompressing afterwards.
Because it also wasn't like lost on me that these people that were involved in this were like younger, free thinking people, like the people that we were following weren't like young Republicans. Like we were looking at, like a poet, someone who goes to therapy in the 70s, like
A scientist, two scientists.
these, two scientists. These are people who are of evolved thinking, educated people, and it's still happening to them. And I think that there's a thing in that as well. Like,
Yeah.
I have to just say, like, Brooke Adams also knocked it out of the park. Like, Donald Sutherland's awesome, but Brooke Adams really carried some of those, like, I'm not being paranoid scenes.
Yeah.
And I'm always happy to see Veronica Cartwright. If you need someone to scream and be very scared, it's Veronica Cartwright. Like, you just bring her in and she knocks it out of the park, and she did it again. Of course, I'm always happy to see a young Jeff Goldblum and his barely controlled hands. Um, but just the cast in this is so excellent. And the moments when, and we didn't talk about this, but there are moments when everybody's talking over each other, and it's like a little confusing, but it's also like, this is real conversation. This is how this would work. Like, he's talking and then he's on the phone and then she's talking in the background and there's all this stuff happening. And it felt very real. It felt very like, we're here in this moment with them. This is exactly what it would sound like. This is what it would look like. And I think that goes into the like super sound design moments where they really understand how to frame this. Because while that's all happening, what we're hearing from him on the phone, but he's not really catching, is that the operator is probably already a pod person.
Yeah.
But he's not catching that yet because Jeff Goldblum's talking over him. And we're catching that, but he's distracted.
And he
And I
still
think
doesn't believe
that's,
Elizabeth, but yeah.
yeah. I'm like, this is all happening. I'm like, this is kind of brilliant. This is kind of brilliant. Because that's right after they see the guy get hit by the car and he's trying to find out. So he's on the phone and they're standing there having a conversation and he's on the phone. But I'm like, that's wild. Wild. Really good. I just loved it. I had never seen it before. I will straight up say that this was my first time watching it, and I thought it was great. And I'm kind of sad I hadn't watched it before now.
Yeah, this was my first viewing as well.
So that was an excellent scene you referenced, Betsy. Yeah, I agree. It did totally keep you in the moment. And yeah, you had a hint that there was something going on because he was trying to talk to the police and they were like, the what? Are you sure you saw the body? And it does. It's in there and it almost kind of gets lost because you have Jeff Goldblum very voraciously, talking about how awful Kipner is. And then you have Elizabeth freaking out because there's that woman trying to talk to Kipner. And
Right.
it's an amazing scene. And definitely, yeah. Like you do wonder if maybe he was able to focus on that call, would he started believing Elizabeth sooner or not? But my takeaway from this is the same takeaway I have from Alien and pretty much any other movie with a leading female character, and that's listen to the fucking woman when she tells you something's fucking wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Despite what you want to say, we're not crazed, hysterical people. We notice shit. And I'm like, this is a generalization. This does not go for everybody of all genders, and I can't really speak to those that are fluid in between or don't identify as a specific one. But I will notice in my male-female relationships, if you try to tell a guy anything, he has not seen it and paid attention to it, he'll basically just pat you on the head, even the best of them. Like they don't get it because they just don't see it. And they're not the most observative creatures alive. It's like if you tell a guy, like he's like, I can't find something, and you say it's in the living room, on the counter, under the TV, to the left, they will walk in that room, not find it, tell you it's not there. And you'll go in the room and point exactly where you said it was. And they're like, oh, it wasn't there a minute ago. So I just want to leave you with that. Maybe trust us because we saw it there. We told you right where it was, and you just fucking walked past it. So if we got taken over by pod people, you know what happened.
Listen.
No, but seriously, listen, if somebody tells you something's weird, don't just disregard it. And I don't mean because we have to worry about alien stuff. I just mean in general. If someone is trying to convey that they feel uncomfortable or unsafe, because that's another thing you need to think about. She was in a relationship with the guy and she was not feeling comfortable around him anymore. And they were just dismissing that
anymore. Yeah. She's straight up like, I don't feel comfortable or safe. He doesn't feel like himself. He's being weird. He's doing this and that. Even if you don't think
right back to him.
Right. They're like, go home. You're just making things up. And it's like, don't go home. Find somewhere to stay that is not with him. You don't have to go home.
And the husband in the laundromat, same thing. He got just disregarded. He's like, this is not my wife. Something he clearly looked afraid. Still got dismissed. Again, it's it's taking it to a different spot. But when you think about domestic situations, that's why people die. Because they just get disregarded. Is it really that bad? Are you sure? He was probably just a little upset that day. She was probably just a little off that day. It's all right. She might be on a period. And next thing you know, somebody's knifed and dead. you know.
This
So-
is roughly around the time when one of my sister's best friends was murdered by her was going to be ex-husband. Oh. And I just wonder, did somebody listen to her? Or, if somebody had listened, or if
Yeah,
would that have changed?
right.
But again, excellent movie. And this actually was not my first watch. I saw it when I was young. I want to say like maybe 8 or 9. And all I really remembered of it was Donald Sutherland making that face and the weird
Screaming.
noise.
Yeah.
And vaguely things about pod people. But so it's much different to watch it as an adult, obviously. But it holds up. I mean, there's some kitschiness because it's the 70s and there's, things that are anachronisms now, like, phones that you could just take off the hook.
It's just not satisfying ending a cell phone call in anger. It's not.
No,
Now you're
it's
being
not.
clicking a button. You're not.
But despite that, I think it works. And I'm sorry, I keep going on. This was not a sequel to the 1950s one, even despite
No.
that scene. But I think you could really look at it as one. Because it really makes sense with Kevin McCarthy's character that he could have broken out, like they tried to fight it and they lost because it was in California then too. They were in Santa Mira and now they're in San Francisco, right? So he could have been fighting with authorities. Other people got taken to the pod. He was broke out of away from them and is trying to warn people again. I like looking at it that way because it's
Yeah.
fun's not the right word, but there's a continuity there that exists that I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they tried to fight and that was the other thing when Donald Sutherland's character was calling the authorities. Now my take on it is they were already pod people anyway, but it sounded reasonable where they were like, yeah, we don't want to cause a panic, keep it to yourself, we'll come send somebody by to talk to you, because you can see that even if they weren't pod people that might have been their response anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. There's just
Yeah.
enough questioning, it is, there's just enough sense in what they're saying.
Mhm. Which, as you reported, pointed out earlier, Rebecca, again, I think it was in our chat, the gaslighting is strong here.
Oh
Oh.
Lord, it's in the whole movie, start to finish.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I do appreciate that everyone is kind of being gaslit. But
Yeah.
that poor woman, Elizabeth, gets gaslit from start to her death. It's awful. It's awful. And by everyone. It's really unfortunate. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But it rubs me the wrong way, whatever. That's part of something. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm angry for her and I'm angry for women.
Yeah. There's
All
a
of them.
background level of frustration of not this shit again.
I told you, listen to me. But yeah. So I mean, I guess with that, like I said, listen to women, watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1970. Watch the 56 one too. It's valuable. It's very interesting. See the way they updated it from 50 to 70. And then I do plan on watching the Invasion from 2007 when it's free. I'm not paying for it. But what's interesting to me is they flip the roles. So like the Benel character is actually, I think Nicole Kidman's playing it. And then the Driscoll character, which was Elizabeth, and I think it's like Becky in the first one, or is it Betsy? Something.
I don't remember.
Betty. It might be Betty. Sorry, the 1950s. So it's something that starts with a B. They call her, but it's still Driscoll. The Driscoll character that is normally a female role in these two things is actually played by Daniel Craig, I believe, in the 2007 one. So I like how they're kind of switching
Yeah, I'm
that.
gonna
So
have
you
to
have.
watch it now.
So that's exciting to me. But yeah, they're valuable movies, and even the 50s one, like obviously it's a little kitschier because it's the 50s, it still holds up really well in a lot of ways. And again, the gaslighting is strong in that one as well. And it is also again a woman, well, actually it's several people that are ignored, but you have the Driscoll character's cousin is saying that her dad's not her dad. And then you have a little boy running around me like it's not my son, and all disregarded until it's too late, basically. So it's well worth a watch. So with that, I hope you enjoyed our little diversion from the fall of the House of Usher, but we'll probably be back at that last month or next month, unless something else happens. But and thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for tuning in.
Absolutely.
You have been listening to the Girls Go Schools podcast. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Girls Go Schools Podcast, on Twitter at Girls Ghost Pod. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girls Go Schools Podcast, and find our podcast on your favorite podcatcher.